Today I'm going to be doing a concealer declutter, and I have about 10 concealers in my makeup collection at this point in time, and we're going to look at them for color and texture, see which ones I like the best, get rid of the rest. I'm hoping to end up with 4 or 5 concealers that I like. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you some of my favorite application tips. Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Melissa. Before I get to swatching some of these concealers that I have, I just wanted to throw a little background information out there for you all about me. I am 61 years old. I just had a birthday. Yay! And I do not use anything like Botox or fillers or anything like that on my face. I just don't. I don't really feel like I need it. I won't say that I never will, but currently I don't. And it's interesting, every now and then I'll get a comment from someone who doesn't really watch my channel, and they're just like, she's full of fillers, she's full of, you know, Botox. Nope. So I do have some like little crinkly bits under my eyes, you know, crepiness. Most people do once they reach a certain age. The texture of their skin under their eyes changes, and it's more prone to developing just little, I call them crepey, crinkly bits. That's what they are. Depending on how you apply concealer, you can emphasize or de-emphasize those little crinkly bits. So I think what I'm gonna do is swatch, just swatch along here and maybe be able to weed out a couple right off the bat. I'm going to start with one that is in my current project pan. It's the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind that comes like this. You're all familiar with this. It's been around forever, except for I pulled the sponge off the top of mine. I was cleaning it and I tore it, and now I just have this situation. So this shade is fair, but I think it seems a little dark. I'm gonna just do some swatches. I think this is a good shade, like if I were concealing other parts of my face, but maybe not so much for under my eyes when I want a little bit of brightness. The next one I have is from Kat Von D. It's the Lock-It Tattoo Concealer, and it came in a little tube. I'm not sure she's making this anymore. Is there a shade on here? Okay, it's Light 16. It was not my first choice, not my first color choice. But sometimes when you make up your mind to buy something, you're like, I'm just going to get the next best thing. So it comes in this little tube. I didn't use it much for concealing. I used it more for like custom blending, like a CC cream for myself, where I would mix it with my favorite sunscreen. And I liked it quite a bit for that. But that is a subject for another day. I'm going to reserve commentary and judgment till the very end. Oh, look, I just smeared that. The next one I have was a favorite for a really long time. It's from L'Oreal. It's the Infallible Pro-Glow Concealer. The shade I have is 01 in Classic Ivory, and I liked this a lot for a really long time. The next concealer I have is from MAC. It's the Pro Longwear Concealer, and my shade was NC15. It comes in a small little tube with a pump, and I have to be honest, I bought this and I never really used it very much. Okay. Well, that's lighter than lighter than it looks in the tube. I'm going to be very confused, I can tell already. Then this next one is going to be the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer, and it says Satin Finish in the shade Fair Beige. This has a gigantic doe foot applicator. So this next one is the Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer in the shade Arrow Root. This also has a pretty standard doe foot applicator. Then I have the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Creamy Concealer, and the shade I have is 40N. Most of these have nice little doe foot applicators. This is the Fenty Pro Filter Concealer in 150. This next one is also from Fenty. It is the Fenty Match Stick in the shade Linen. When I did my foundations, I really mostly use this as a foundation, but it is a concealer. But I thought I would go ahead and include it in this swatch. This little swatch fest. And the last one I have is from Glossier. It's their Stretch Concealer in G11, and it comes in a little pot, which I'm usually not a fan of. I'm looking in my mirror because sometimes what I see in the viewfinder, it's a little harder to detect the color in the viewfinder. So here we are. There's quite a range of shades that I have chosen, and I'll just also preface this with, I usually just use this for concealing under my eyes. I don't usually use it on something like this, Little Beauty. I'll share with you later what I usually use on something like this. So this first one is the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind that I've been using in my project pan, and the more I use it, the more I'm like, I'm kinda over this. I feel like it is not a great color match for me. It's got a lot of yellow in it, and it's a little bit of a heavier concealer. So I'm getting ready to take this out of my project pan and declutter it, so that's what's happening with that. This next one is the Kat Von D concealer, which I don't even think they're making anymore. I don't even care enough to look it up, to be very honest. But I'm also going to declutter this because it is quite old. And again, I feel like it's has a little bit too much of a yellow undertone for my skin tone. And why talk about something that's not readily available? So let's talk about L'Oreal's Infallible Pro-Glow. This is a light shade, 01. If this is their lightest shade, let me quickly go online. Wow. Okay, so I looked it up, and this is the lightest shade that this concealer comes in, which is clearly one of the darker ones I have swatched on my face. I think this is a nice formula, really nice formula, if you can find a shade that works for you. I am going to declutter this because I feel like that's too dark. 3 for 3, right out of the gate. This one here is the MAC concealer, which I have had quite a while. It's still in good shape, and it's in a pump, so it's sealed, so I don't feel like that's really a problem. And I'm actually quite surprised at the shade here. I don't hate it. So I might keep this in my collection for a little while just to play with it a little bit more. I'm kind of surprised at that. That could possibly work. And then the last one on this side is the e.l.f. Camo Concealer, which I remember liking this when I used it, so I'm probably going to keep it. It is a little bit lighter, and it's a little bit more of a neutral undertone, like compared to this. This is more yellow, this is a little bit more neutral, that's a little bit more neutral. So I am going to keep this a little bit longer. Okay, let's go to this side. So moving over to the other side of my face, the one on the top is the Ilia Serum Concealer, and this is quite brightening, which there's a time and place for a really brightening concealer. So this is definitely a yes for me. The next one down here is the ColourPop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Acid Concealer. And it is one of the darker ones that I have, but I do remember liking this. So I'm confused. So this might be one that I hold on to and play with a little bit more. The next one is the Fenty Pro Filter Concealer. Again, another one that is a little bit lighter, a little bit more brightening, but it's also a little heavier. I think I'm going to declutter this because I've had this for a while, and it's not one that I routinely reach for because it's not one that I think it's a little too heavy for my skin age type, I'm going to declutter that. It pains me. All right, this second to last one is the matchstick. I am keeping this, but more as a foundation. This, as a concealer, is a little dry. So if you have like perfect under eyes, this might work for you, but it would require quite a fair amount of skin prep before you apply it, and also I would definitely recommend like warming it up on your finger like this a little bit so that it glides on a little bit easier. I love it as just like a quick and easy all over like lightweight foundation. I'm keeping it, but not as a concealer, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And the last one is this Glossier concealer, which I like. I like this one, especially paired with the Glossier lightweight foundation, because I think this can also like fill in the gaps on the foundation. It's very blendable, but lightweight. That is kind of the key here, a lightweight concealer as you get older. So I've basically cut my makeup stash in half. And there are, you know, those few that I'm going to play with a little bit more and see. The rest of them I am getting rid of because they're too old or their color doesn't work for me. So I want to do a little demo with some tips and tricks. And I'm like, which one should I use? I'm definitely going to use the Ilia foundation on one eye, and maybe I'll use the ColourPop under the other eye, just to have a little variety. So I'm going to clean this off, and then I'm going to talk about how to prep your skin for applying concealer. Let's talk about skin prep next, and I have 2 eye creams that I definitely would recommend to you. And some days I use one, some days I use both. It just depends. There's really no rhyme or reason. Certainly during the winter I probably use both because the drier the air is, the more those crinkly bits show up. Let's jump into the products. I have really been enjoying the Neutrogena Rapid Wrinkle Repair Eye Cream. As you can see, I'm pretty close to finishing this. Can I get a better view of that for you? So what I like about this is it has some retinol in it, and that is good for dealing with some of those crinkly bits, making them less noticeable over time. You know, of course, consistency is the key, but it's a really nice, like, lightweight under eye concealer. Soaks in, I don't get any irritation from the retinol, and this has been a win for me. I will be picking up another tube of this. I really like it, and I do feel like it has helped a little bit. You know, maybe it's the placebo effect, maybe it's really helping, but for now I like it enough that I want to continue using it. Sometimes these kind of things you have to use for a little while before you really notice any kind of improvement. I usually start with this under my eyes, you know, wash my face. I keep this in the bathroom and I just tap it on under my eyes and while I'm brushing my teeth, that kind of thing. And so it gives it quite a bit of time to absorb and soak in by the time I sit down to do my makeup. The other eye cream I like is the Kiehl's Creamy Eye Treatment. That also has a little avocado in it. And I often use this as I'm applying my concealer. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So we're going to circle back to this, but I do like this a lot, and it's great like at night because it's a little bit heavier. Yeah, I love that. A lot of people just use their fingers to tap in their concealer, and that's fine. However, I have found there are some tools that I like that really help apply that in a very natural way without it going on too heavy. Because when you put it on too heavy, that's when you start really accentuating those fine lines under your eyes. And I'm all about getting away with as little as I possibly can under there in terms of color, but also the number of layers that I put on under my eyes. Like, I don't like to bring my foundation up under my eyes because that's generally too heavy. And then you're applying concealer over it, and then by that time you are just like a cakey mess under there. I do have a couple of brushes that I like, and also I like using a sponge at the end for like the final finish. I have 2 brushes. The first one is from e.l.f. and it's called their Flawless Concealer Brush. And it is a little bit softer and a little bit fluffier. I really like this quite a bit. This one is from Real Techniques and it's their Expert Concealer Brush, which is much smaller and not as soft. Not as full, not as soft. And I think out of the two, I like the e.l.f. brush a little bit better. This one I think would be better if you were like doing concealing elsewhere, because it's a little stiffer, but we're going to get to that later. So for today's demo, I'm going to use this and this and these. Let's start with the Ilia one on this side. When I said less is more, like that is really the key here. And granted, I don't have a lot of dark circles to cover up, but I do think it helps brighten and even out the skin tone under my eyes. So I don't skip this step. And what I like to do is I do like 3 dots like that. And then I take my moisturizer and I just take a little bit on the end of my finger and I put 2 more dots there. Then I like to just kind of mix and blend those 2 products using a brush under my eye. So I'm just, gonna go in there. I do go in with my finger do a little tapping, and then I finish up with this and press it into the skin. What this does, this is help absorb like the excess, so you don't have so much on there that you're dealing with. This is practically dry. Like I soften it, I rinse it, and then I squeeze it out into a towel so there's not a lot of water there. And that's really pretty much all I do to that. So let's go ahead and do the other side with the ColourPop. I'm going to use the same technique. It'll be interesting to see how a different color looks. So 2 different products, pretty different shades. This one is a little bit darker, this one's a little bit lighter. So which one do you think did a better job? Like on the face, I think they look pretty similar. This one's a little bit brighter. I can see I could have blended this a tiny bit more. Depends on the foundation you're using, what's gonna go best with it. If I'm doing a really dark, like smoky eye, I like a much brighter, lighter concealer. If I'm doing a more natural eye, I'll do a more natural concealer color. If I get done and I feel like, oh, this looks a little cakey and I might want to like smooth it out a little bit, I'll take a little bit more I'll take a little bit more moisturizer and tap that in, because I don't want it to look cakey. And I'll just tap it right over the concealer, very gently. You have to be a little careful because it can tend to lift it a little bit. So I don't typically put any powder under my eyes. Like I might, when I'm powdering my face and I'm all done, just go tap tap with the big powder brush, but usually not. I don't want that to look dried out. And by the time you get done with your foundation and all your other stuff, it sets. And if you use this technique, using this at the end so you don't have too much product, it's not going to settle into your fine lines and wrinkles like if you were just using your fingers. So I promised I would give you a little tip for like how I deal with blemishes or I have extra redness on my face. And I use a powder foundation to conceal those areas. Like this bad boy, he's 3-dimensional. There's not going to be much hope of concealing him at all. But let's look at the redness I have around my nose here. And I'm using the Fenty Soft Matte Powder Foundation for this. It's my current favorite. And this smaller like finishing brush from Real Techniques. And I just put a little here, and I'm going to do this side. And I use this to cover that redness. This is after I've done everything. I've done all my foundation and everything else. And I find this lasts the longest and it looks the most natural. So you can see I have covered it up here, but not here. I just love the way that finishes that off and covers that up. Now if I have a blemish, I'll do the same thing down here. It works a little bit better when they're flat. I can still see it. I think the lights are blowing it out a little bit, so maybe you don't see it as much, but it does help cover it. And as that heals and gets smaller and I just have like a small red mark on my skin, it'll help cover that. I don't find concealing marks on my face like super effective or a super high priority, to be very honest. It's my skin and it's going to show through. I just want to like blur it and make it look as good as it possibly can. If you have any little tips that you use to apply concealer, I love it when we share down below and share our favorite tips, tricks, all of those. These are mine. This is what works great for me. Which eye do you like better? Under eye, do you like better? The lighter one? The more natural one? It's very subtle. I'm thinking I like the more natural one a little bit better, the ColourPop one on this side. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and put a few links to some other videos that I think you might enjoy, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Don't forget to subscribe.